کنفرانس در پارلمان کانادا با حضور نمایندگان از احزاب مختلف، فراخوان به لیست گذاری سپاه خامنه‌ای و حمایت از مبارزه مردم ایران علیه دیکتاتوری آخوندی. به دعوت خانم جودی اسکرو، وزیر پیشین مهاجرت کانادا و رئیس کمیته تجارت بین‌المللی پارلمان این کشور، کنفرانسی در محل این پارلمان درباره لزوم اجرای قطعنامه مصوب پارلمان کانادا برای لیست‌گذاری سپاه خامنه‌ای و بررسی موقعیت رژیم بعد از مرگ رئیسی جلاد برگزار شد. آقای استرون استیونسون، هماهنگ کننده کارزار تغییر برای ایران، میهمان این اجلاس بود و شماری از نمایندگان و دستیاران پارلمان کانادا و اعضای جوامع ایرانی مقیم کانادا در این اجلاس حضور داشتند.
خانم جودی اسکرو در شروع این جلسه گفت لیست گذاری تروریستی سپاه پاسداران 100% یک امر ضروری است. این اقدام یک ضربه به گردش مالی سپاه پاسداران وارد می‌کند و می‌تواند واکنش‌های مشابهی از سوی انگلستان و سازمان ملل داشته باشد. مردم ایران خواستار دخالت نظامی غرب نیستند، اما می‌گویند که به جای حمایت از ظلم و ستم آخوندها از ما حمایت کنید.
استرون استیونسون، هماهنگ کننده کارزار تغییر برای ایران، در سخنرانی خود در این کنفرانس با اشاره به قطعنامه مصوب پارلمان کانادا برای لیست‌گذاری سپاه خامنه‌ای گفت:
To me, it seems now that this is a wonderful opportunity for the executive branch, for the government to fulfill that commitment, blacklist the IRGC. The message that will send to the EU and to my country, to the UK, who are still dragging their feet on this issue, still saying to us, oh no, if we blacklist the IRGC, it will mean the closure of our embassies in Tehran. It will mean we no longer can participate in dialogue with the mullahs. You know, I keep saying, why the hell do we want to have dialogue with this regime of murderers and gangsters?
استرون استیونسون سپس به هلاکت رئیسی جلاد و سوابق جنایتکارانه او به طور خاص در قتل عام 30,000 زندانی سیاسی در سال 67 اشاره کرد و افزود رئیسی را جلاد تهران می‌خواندند. آقای استیونسون ضمن اشاره به شکست مفتضحانه خامنه‌ای در نمایش انتخابات مجلس و اذعان سردمداران رژیم به تحریم انتخابات گفت:
Let me say en passant that every time a crisis like this happens, we have the sudden emergence of the son of the infamous Shah of Iran, who fled back in 1979 at the revolution, taking with him, according to the New York Times, an estimated $4 billion of wealth that had been plundered from the Iranian people. The Shah died the following year, but his son, Reza Pahlavi, has been here to Ottawa. He's held meetings here. Every time there is a crisis, this guy who has been invisible for 4 decades suddenly pops up. In fact, I wrote an article a couple of weeks ago. Some of you may remember the famous poem by the American poet Hughes Mearns, The Man Who Wasn't There. You know, last night I was walking down the stair when I met a man who wasn't there. He wasn't there again today. I wish he'd go away. It seems to me like Reza Pahlavi is the man who wasn't there. He wasn't there for the last 40 years. And suddenly, when Masha Amini's death led to the uprising, suddenly he's doing an international tour telling the world, you know, we must restore the monarchy. And incidentally, at the same time, reminding people that he's been in contact with the IRGC and they are willing to work with him to restore order after the overthrow of the mullahs regime. He even was invited, unbelievably, to the Munich Security Conference 2 years ago. And he had a tiny group of supporters standing outside the headquarters in Munich where the conference was taking place. One of them produced a poster with a picture of the former head of the Shah's Savak, the brutal secret police that murdered poets, academics, educators under the rule of the Shah and led to the uprising that overthrew his regime. The head of that organization of Savak, Sabeti, his picture was on this poster, and the message underneath was the terror of future, the fear of future terrorists. In other words, the supporters of Reza Pahlavi are saying, restore the monarchy, not only will we bring back the IRGC after the mullahs are thrown out, but we'll also bring back Savak. It's like Winston Churchill, after the defeat of the Nazis, saying, oh, by the way, I think we should try and see if Heinrich Himmler would kindly keep the SS to control order in Germany. You know, it's unbelievable that people think there can be any legitimacy for this guy, Reza Pahlavi. He is living in some opulence from the plundered wealth that his father stole. And if he thinks there is any hope of the restoration of the monarchy, then there is no one inside Iran that would support him. We have to turn our attention to supporting the people of Iran, the 85 million Iranians. They have the absolute right to overthrow this tyrannical regime that has oppressed them for decades. They have the absolute right to restore freedom, democracy. The president-elect of the National Council of Resistance of Iran, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, she and her government in exile has produced a 10-point plan for a future Iran. And it's a 10-point plan to ban the nuclear threat, to restore women's rights, human rights, to end executions and the death penalty, to restore justice, to restore democracy, to restore fundamental freedoms. This is a manifesto that I'd be prepared to stand for election under. This is the future that Iran wants. When people are taking to the streets in their millions inside Iran and they're chanting death to the mullahs, or no to the mullahs and no to the sheikhs, no to the Shah. They are saying we don't want autocracy, we want democracy. They are saying we don't want a monarchy, we don't want the restoration of another autocratic dictator. We want absolute democracy. I think Reza Pahlavi is being used as something of a useful idiot by the mullahs. When some of these demonstrations take place, you very often get members of the Basij in civilian clothing taking part as if they are demonstrating against the regime, but they are shouting slogans about restoring the monarchy. And this is to try to confuse the protesters. Oh, hang on a minute. Are we going to get rid of the mullahs and risk our lives in protest to get rid of the mullahs only to see the restoration of the Shah? And, you know, that's why he is playing the role of a useful idiot and should not be listened to. I wrote this book last year. It was published, Dictatorship and Revolution, a Contemporary History of Iran, where I researched the background to the Pahlavi dynasty, and it made frightening reading, you know, for anyone to think there's any possible role for a future monarchy in Iran. They're completely kidding themselves. The problem I know from my 15 years in the European Parliament, when I was a supporter of from day one, I was a supporter of the MEK and the NCRI. Anytime I published an article, wrote a book, made a lecture, spoke in the Parliament, I would be inundated with a campaign from the cyber army that are paid volumes by the mullahs regime. I would get thousands of emails. My staff would be going crazy saying, what have you done? I know this happens to people like Judy Scrow and to any of you who have put your foot into this particular minefield. But this is a demonization campaign that we're well accustomed to. It is hugely financed by the mullahs. But they have gone one stage further now. The IRGC has started targeting, and they're using now, they used to do it themselves, they used to target supporters of the MEK, the NCRI, or opponents of the regime, expat Iranians, or Western politicians even. They used to target them for assassination or for, attacks. Now they are using narco-criminal gangs. Last November, my very close friend, and for the 15 years I was in the European Parliament, he was senior vice president of the Parliament, Alejo Vidal-Quadras, a senior Spanish politician from the Spanish Conservative Party. Alejo, together with myself and the Portuguese former member of the European Parliament, Paulo Casaca, as the three senior members of the In Search of Justice NGO registered in Brussels, which fights for freedom for the people of Iran. We were told by the Iranian regime that we had been placed on their terror list. Alejo was number one target. He went to his foreign minister and spoke to his head of cabinet. The foreign minister was absent, and said, how is it possible this regime can place a Spanish politician on their terror list? Nothing happened. Last November, a hitman shot Alejo in the head outside his home in Madrid. He turned at the last minute, and the bullet went through his jaw, inside one side, outside the other, broke his jaw in two places. And in the ambulance being rushed to hospital, before he lost consciousness, he opened his iPhone and wrote Iran on the iPhone. Alejo has now survived, and courageously he is now even more robust in his antagonism towards the IRGC. His wife is fully supportive. But this is the IRGC who in 2018 sent a registered diplomat, Asadollah Assadi, who was a diplomat in their embassy in Vienna. They sent him from Tehran back to Vienna on Austrian Airlines with a 2.5-pound TATP professionally manufactured bomb on a commercial airliner. He was then filmed by the intelligence services in Europe, handing the bomb over to 3 co-conspirators, instructing them to take the bomb to a huge rally that Judy Scroll, Sharam, myself, many others from Canada and from around the world were attending, with instructions to detonate the bomb there, which would have killed and maimed hundreds. That was a registered diplomat. He was sentenced to the maximum sentence in the Belgian jail, because he was arrested in Belgium, of 20 years. And what do the IRGC do? They immediately take a hostage, a young charity worker from Belgium, a charity. He was arrested in Tehran, sentenced to 40 years imprisonment and 75 lashes for espionage. And of course, the mullahs then go straight to the Belgian government and say, can we arrange a prisoner swap? We'll give you this guy back if you give us Asadollah Assadi. And of course, the Belgian government completely undermining the whole sense of justice in Europe.
استرون استیونسون در پایان سخنرانیش در کنفرانس در پارلمان کانادا گفت میلیون‌ها نفر به رهبری زنان با فریاد زن مقاومت آزادی در ایران اعتراض می‌کنند. کانون‌های شورشی در داخل ایران در حال رشد هستند. برای همین آخوندها از اینکه قدرت خودشان را از دست بدهند وحشت دارند. لیست گذاری سپاه عمیق‌ترین پیام را به جهان ارسال خواهد کرد که این مردم ایران هستند که ما از آنها حمایت می‌کنیم.
در بخش دیگری از کنفرانس خانم استفانا کوزی، نماینده پارلمان کانادا از حزب محافظه‌کار و وزیر دارایی در دولت سایه، با اشاره به رأی پارلمان کانادا برای لیست گذاری سپاه خامنه‌ای گفت: پارلمان ما دوباره تصمیم به لیست گذاری سپاه پاسداران گرفته است. مهم است که دولت ما سپاه را در لیست تروریستی قرار بدهد و همانطور که آقای استیونسون گفت، قرار دادن سپاه پاسداران در لیست تروریستی کار درستی است که منجر به تغییر می شود. شهرام گلستانه، مسئول انجمن دموکراتیک ایران، ضمن استقبال از تصمیم پارلمان کانادا برای لیست گذاری سپاه پاسداران گفت: باید تاکید کنم که ایرانیان مقیم کانادا سالهاست که خواستار چنین اقدامی بودند. من میگویم بیش از 20 سال است. نه به دلایل سیاسی، برای اینکه سپاه را برای آنچه که هست نامگذاری کنند. حقایق بسیاری وجود دارند که تایید می‌کنند سپاه یک سازمان واقعاً تروریستی با گسترده جهانی است. از این رو این حق مردم ایران است که با سپاه پاسداران و سرکوب آنها علیه مردم، به ویژه زنان، مبارزه کنند. بنابراین کانادا می‌تواند با اعمال فشار بر رژیم ارزش‌های حقوق بشر و دموکراتیک خود را احیا کند.
در ادامه این کنفرانس جلسه پرسش و پاسخ برگزار شد و حضار سوالهای خود را درباره موقعیت کنونی رژیم بعد از مرگ رئیسی و تأثیراتی که لیست گذاری سپاه خواهد داشت مطرح کردند. استیونسون در این بخش از جلسه در رابطه با دادگاه نمایشی 104 تن از اعضای مقاومت ایران گفت: این یک نمایش مسخره است و یک تهدید تروریسم آشکار علیه کسانی است که در خارج ایران ساکن هستند.